Welcome to Talking Grit, a Detroit Lions podcast. Talking Grit is brought to you by the Monroe County Reporters, Monroe's top news source for police, fire, and community events.
Code 3 at Depot Street. Truck boy at
Follow them on Facebook, and for $2.99 a month, you can become a subscriber and get the news you crave even faster.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Talking Grit. It's been so long since we've had an episode. It's been like one whole day. We just couldn't wait to talk to you guys again. So I'm Jason Harwood. With me is Jacob Litton. Today, we're going to talk roster construction, our 53-man roster. Jacob and I each came up with one. I don't know who he picked. He doesn't know who I picked. So we're going to go through and see if we differ or see if we're alike and just discuss, why we picked the way we picked. Before we get into that, the big news of today, and it goes along with the roster here, obviously, is DJ Reader was removed from the physically unable to perform list. You might hear it called as the PUP list. If he started the season on that, he wouldn't have been able to play. He would have missed the first 4 games. And with our bye week being week 5, he would not have been able to play until week 6. Them activating, which means he's going to be on the active roster, so that takes a roster spot. But the good news about that is they think he's going to be ready before week 4. Would it be week 1? I don't know. He's going to have 2 weeks, to see if his body's ready to play in a game. But it means that we're going to have DJ Reader sooner than week 4. So I was pretty relieved when I saw that. What about you, Jacob?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, we didn't bring him here to sit on the bench, sit on the PUP list. So if he's, nearing game action, that's really good to hear. That means that we're obviously expecting him to be coming sooner rather than later. And even though, the people filling in for him have actually played pretty well thus far in the preseason, he's an impact player, and we definitely need him out there.
I agree. Excellent run stopper. He can take on double teams. It's going to free up a Liam. So, it's going to be exciting to see him on the field and see how he does. Can't wait to see those practice reports to see how he looks. But he hasn't played in a while, and, it's going to take a little bit to get him up to football shape. So whether you can get that done in 2 weeks, I don't know. But if he is active for week 1 versus the Rams, I would expect a pretty light load, which, you got a guy like Kyle Pecco that's been playing pretty good ball in practice, so he might take a majority of Reader snaps just that first couple weeks until Reader gets his feet underneath him.
That's the good thing about his position is that you really can put him. He can be active and he can still play in the game in a limited role without that many snaps. Versus obviously if you got a quarterback, there's just certain players that are much harder to get up to game speed like that. Defensive line, he's able to get some snaps in.
Like you said, didn't expect DJ Reader to be in for 65 snaps in a game to begin with. We'll just those kind of rotate him in and out, and he's going to be on there primarily rushing downs or questionable mid-distance second down. So it's not like we had to replace him for 65 snaps a game, anyways. So I'm ready to get on my list. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, we're going to go by position group.
I'm interested to see if it's different or how different it is. Because obviously there's, only a handful of spots that are really question marks. So,
yeah, I can't wait till you, get on me about my picks. So that'll be fun. This is what I've been looking forward to all day. A little banter. So, how about I'm going to let you be the brave one. You go first on quarterbacks. You keep in 2 or 3?
So on my quarterback list, I have Jared Goff, Hendon Hooker, and Nate Sudfeld. I picked all 3 to make the team. How about you?
I didn't. I left Nate off.
Okay, first one already.
So my reasoning on leaving him off is that this is kind of a roster gymnastics type move. Even Nate Sudfeld may still end up being the number 2 quarterback on the roster, but with the Broderick Martin iffy injury, I felt like we might keep one of those positions, an extra player at one of those positions, and then just knowing that Nate's probably going to be available. So, they might end up cutting someone else later on and then activating Nate Sudfeld if they want to be number 2. So that's kind of the main reason why I did that. Although in my head, just watching those games, I really feel like Hendon's pretty close to supplanting Nate Sudfeld anyways and being able to take over and be able to win some games. I just think that his
I'm
legs,
still not sold that he's, as close there yet.
I don't know, his legs, and then the fact that he was able to keep his composure and still go through his progressions and not try to rush after being sacked 3 plays in a row. He went right up there, and then he was once the talent level on the field evened out, then he was able to, do his thing, and he looked much, much better in that position. That's kind of why I chose that way, and just gave me an extra, the roster spot for later on.
Which is something to think about.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a good way to think because of the injuries, the other things we have to play around. We're not as concerned with team stealing Nate Sudfeld from us.
I mean, it still is a slight gamble. I mean, Nate could, not be on board, and he could try to go sign on someone else's practice squad. I don't think that there's teams, especially after what he looked like in the first 2 weeks, that are clamoring to have Nate Sudfeld on their team.
Right.
So
right.
I think it's a fairly safe bet, but that was my reasoning, just solely on freeing up a roster spot. But before week 1, we could have Nate Sudfeld on the active roster, and and Hendon Hooker too. So,
question for you here though, in this scenario, so you've got just Goff and Hooker being on the roster for the cut down day.
Yeah.
Do you have Fromm being on the practice squad, or do you just have them letting him walk?
I was on a message board earlier today, talking with someone about this. The person questioned me and asked if you could have 2 quarterbacks on your practice squad, and I said yes, you could do that, but then you're taking away a spot from someone else. I don't know. I mean, do I think Fromm has a higher upside than Nate Sudfeld on the football field? Yes, but Nate Sudfeld is probably with the Lions for another reason, especially if he's not on the practice squad. It's doing the stuff that he does to help Jared Goff out, looking ahead at his opponents, scouting them, getting Jared ready for another game. I think that his value is different than Jake Fromm. I'm not saying Jake Fromm couldn't develop into that role. I don't really know. But I think, Nate's been with our team for 2 years, and he's, Jared's comfortable with him. So I think that's his role, and that's probably why he's still on the team.
Yeah. No, it's hard to justify with limited practice squad spots. It's hard to justify keeping a 4th quarterback on that, you're not going to have to count on in a pinch, really.
Yeah.
Versus some of these other deeper position groups. You got the offensive line, some of the defensive backs and stuff, defensive line. Those are guys that you need in the building. You need in the practice squad because there's a decent chance they're going to have to play. You keep Fromm on the practice squad. I mean, what are the odds he actually ever sees the field?
Yeah, exactly. And if Fromm gets to the field, you got bigger problems than that. Say one of the quarterbacks gets hurt and there's an open spot. I think the Lions would probably be open to having Fromm back. And Dan Campbell talked pretty positively in his press conference about him, and they did give him a shot to shine. So he must have done something. If he didn't do his job correctly, and the Lions wouldn't have cared enough to give him, the 4th quarter in that last preseason game, because they certainly didn't have to do that.
Right. Let's move on to the next one.
All right. So running backs. You went first in the last one. I'll go here. I have us keeping 4, and I'm betting that you and I match on this one. There's, but maybe not. David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, Craig Reynolds, and Sione Vaki are the 4 that I have. You keeping those 4? Or you keeping someone else too?
I have the same 4. I think this was a pretty easy position group to pick through here, just because. I mean, I think it's a solid group. Outside of, Zonovan Knight had a decent preseason for us. Jamar Jefferson showed some flashes. Just not enough really to, steal a roster spot from one of these other guys. I feel pretty good about these are the 4 that are going to be there. I think it's more interesting to figure out, practice squad purposes, do we keep one of those other running backs?
Yeah, I think for sure if they pass through waivers or they don't sign with another team's practice squad, I think you're going to see Zonovan Knight and Jamar Jefferson.
You think both on the practice squad?
I don't know. I mean, I could see them both being there. It just depends on, running backs get injured.
Yeah, right. 12 spots. Do you keep 2 running backs?
out of who's left, I think Zonovan Knight will probably be the next one on there. He's the closest to like David Montgomery. So if David Montgomery got injured, he's the closest, running between the tackles guy, after Craig, obviously. But, of the three guys that were left there, that's probably who I would keep, or I would keep there. And then, if Jameer got hurt, I guess Jamar would be closer, but Baki would be able to take some passes too. So I would think Zonovan Knight would be the next one, to make the practice squad if he passes through waivers.
Yeah, valid.
I think that's pretty cut and dry, and I think most people that are doing this exercise are going to just have that same 4. The next one, I could see some, differences. So curious what you did with wide receiver. How many you got on there? So you tell me. Go ahead. I'm going to let you lead off.
All right. So I have Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Khalif Raymond. Those are the easy ones, right? There's no surprises there. We already know about them. And then I only have us keeping 4 receivers, and that 4th receiver I have Isaiah Williams.
I'm right with you, and that's exactly how I have it. So I think,
really? Okay.
Yeah, I had before yesterday's game, I had mine picked, and DPJ was on my list. I think we just talked on, not the one that we did with the game recap, but the previous one. I thought DPJ was gonna be in line for that, but he did 3 targets, 0 for 0. Just looks like he's not involved. I don't know what's going on. So it's kind of a shame, but yeah. And I think Isaiah Williams kind of just played himself on this team because I think it's getting to be more and more obvious that he's probably not going to make it through waivers if we let him go. So I think that they're going to end up keeping him. We're going to need more than 4 wide receivers, so we're going to have to get someone else. So are you of the mindset like I am that, we're going to be looking through the waiver wire or trading for another wide receiver?
Absolutely. You have to have another one. We have to have, that's what they're wanting is a big receiver. You got to see what's out there. And then, if you don't, it's tough to say if there's nothing out there. We don't know exactly what we have. We know what we have in DPJ and Fountain. Do we keep one of them on the practice squad? I just don't feel like it's worth it. I think we've seen enough, and I think they missed their chance. But, then we got to roll the dice on somebody else. And there's not going to be any shortage of receivers. There's going to be some big receivers that are available. And, bring them in, give them a fair shot and see what they have. You got to have somebody else in here, though. Whether they actually make the active roster right away, they're going to be on the practice squad likely to begin with, but depending on, there's some veterans sitting there waiting for cut down days. Maybe we bring one of those guys in there. Who knows? But there definitely will be another receiver coming.
Yeah, I'm not sure. The only one that could make it out of this group, I guess, is Maurice Alexander. I could see them pushing him through. I think Caden Davis might make it to the practice squad. They might put Doris on there just so that there's a familiarity. All right. I think we're going to differ on this list, tight ends, and I'll lead off on this. I have us keeping 4 on this list, whether we stay this way or not, but I think right now we're going to keep 4. We got Sam Laporta, Brock Wright, Shane Zylstra, and Parker Hesse. I think that we're going to keep those 4. Parker Hesse is basically going to play our fullback. He's probably going to be in goal line sets. I think Shane Zylstra right now is more in line to play the X than any of our X wide receivers. He's a bigger body, played wide receiver in college. He can receive. So I think, if we can't find that X, that Shane might be able to come in on some of those plays where you want a bigger wide receiver out there. And of course, you got Sam and Brock. Those are obviously 1 and 2. There's no question about that. What do you have for yours?
I just have 3 tight ends. So I have Laporta, Brock Wright, Shane Zylstra. I know you were kind of high on Parker Hesse about the possibility of keeping him just because of his, fullback potential. I do think that James Mitchell, based on the last game especially, really, played himself out of a job. Because I feel like he was kind of above Parker Hesse up until this last game. It's an interesting take. I don't know. I think the Parker Hesse is definitely somebody good to keep on the practice squad and see him develop a little more and see what we have. But right now I have 3 tight ends, and I'm using that extra position elsewhere.
Yeah, well, my feeling is, say we go and get another wide receiver, Parker Hesse is probably my first one out. That, you're going to probably cut him to get another wide receiver if someone comes open on the waiver wire. But for right now, that's how I have it lined up, and we'll see how it goes. But Malcolm's been injured. If he's going to be your fullback, they might want to see how he does when he comes back, and then that might make Parker, a little more expendable when you have, Malcolm, if you're going to play him at fullback, if the Lions decide to do that.
The thing about Parker is I don't have it in front of me, but how many snaps did he actually get in at fullback during the preseason? Do you know? Do you have that information?
I don't, but the thing is that, like, in practice, he was number 1 and number 2, and the Lions always kept a fullback. Jason Kabinda was always the fullback, no longer on the team. I just think they like to have someone that can play that position for, like, goal line or, 3rd and 4th and short plays, which, the Lions will like to go on those type of plays. So they like to have someone that can do that position. However, Sam could play it, Brock could play it, and Malcolm Rodriguez could play it. It just depends on whether they want to put them in those positions or not.
Right. Yeah, it looks like Parker, I don't have the fullback stats, but he caught 1 pass for 8 yards in the preseason. Yeah. So didn't see a lot. I mean, maybe because of how they've been utilizing in practice and everything, and the fact that we don't have a true fullback. I also think if that's your plan, no one's going to steal Parker Hesse from us to keep him on the practice squad and see how that turns out.
And that's very true. And that's why I think he's my first one out if we get another wide receiver. So, but that's, why I have it. But we'll see who's right on Tuesday. Your guess is as good as mine on that. But that's the way I feel it's going to be right now. So, how many offensive linemen do you have them keeping?
So, I put on here, based on my roster build, Christian Mahogany would be on the NFI list starting the season. He's not going to be taking up a roster spot. So I have 9 total offensive linemen.
Yeah, that's what I have too. And I have the same thing with Mahogany and the NFI, the non-football injury list. He hasn't even practiced
yet. Do we have
yet.
The same 9?
I don't know. I'm sure we have the same starting 5.
Oh, yeah. You better.
Yeah. All right. So I'll let you go through your 9 and we'll see if we're the same or differ.
Okay. Well, the first 5 are easy, obviously. Penei Sewell, Taylor Decker, Frank Ragnow, Graham Glasgow, Kevin Zeitler. Those are the easy ones, obviously. After that, I have Colby Sorsdahl, Dan Skipper, Giovanni Manu, and then my last guy sneaking in on the offensive line is going to be, I don't know how you say his name, Iwosika?
Oh, Awasika, Kyoto.
Yeah, I have him making the team.
Yep, that's my exact 9. Iguakun was my one that I wanted to keep, but I think they're going to try to put him on they'll try to slide him on the practice squad. But yeah, those are the 9. I went with Awasika because, he's had some starts last year, last in the NFC Championship game. I just think they're going to want experience on the line with, especially Manu taking up a roster spot, probably not going to play very much. Colby didn't look necessarily great yesterday against the 1s, but once the 2s came in, he looked really good. So I think he's kind of coming into his own. I think he's still got some growth. They kind of bounce around between guard and tackle. Looks like they primarily have him on tackle this year, so we'll see how he develops. He'll need another year. He came from a small school, so it's going to take him a little bit. He was forced into action last year when there was an injury, so hopefully we don't have to deal with that. But, if we do, see if he's more prepared. But, he's
right.
This is the 9 that we're going to go with. Like I said, Iguakun is the next one that I would have liked to kept, but I think we'll try to get him on the practice squad.
I agree. I have him just missing the cut there and making it on the practice squad.
Obviously, his starting 5, feel very comfortable with them, especially, Penei gave us a little scare earlier in the week, thinking that he might be, might have had a foot injury, but it looks like, or ankle injury. It looks like he just rolled it. So, give him 2 weeks. I think he's going to be, hopefully, that's rested and he's ready to play against the Rams. So, yep. Anybody else on that list that you were struggling with at all, but besides Iguakun?
No, just looking back through the list again. I mean, I don't think we really saw enough out of any of the other guys to warrant keeping them.
Yeah, I think Michael Neese and Duke Clemens are probably going to have a shot at being on the practice squad.
I would say Duke Clemens. I don't know about Neese. I don't know. I mean, I think they shifted him around a lot, right? We were trying out pretty much every spot on the line, or
they had him at guard, and then Iguakun was the center for Kansas City, and then they kind of flip-flopped him that last week before the Pittsburgh just to see if they had some versatility to go in both ways. So I think Iguakun showed a little bit better being a center. I think that's where they played him yesterday. They practiced him at guard during the week, and I think he was a little bit better than Neese.
So out of all the offensive roster spots, it looks like I have 2 more players than you do. So you've got 2 extra roster spots to use on your defense coming up here.
Yep. Yeah. We'll see where I put them. I wanted to keep 2 long snappers.
I bet you did.
So let's go to interior defensive line next.
Okay.
I have us keeping 6 players in this. I have Aleem, McNeil, Levi Anzarike, Makai Wingo, Kyle Pecco, DJ Reader, and Broderick Martin for my interior defensive line. What do you have?
I actually have the same exact 6 on my interior line.
All right. Yeah, I think Wingo is probably going to be, the one way down on the roster. He's young. I think, they're probably going to want to bulk him up a little bit. He's got a good pass rush, but he's going to probably be a liability in the run game. There's multiple times in the preseason where they just kind of pushed him out of the way.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's not gonna fly with Aaron Glenn's defense and Dan Campbell. They want to stop the run primarily. So you got to be if you're going to play interior, you better be able, stop the run first and then get to the passer next.
Yeah, agreed. And also with the whole, we're keeping DJ. He's not on the PUP list, but we're going to need an extra body. We're going to need an extra person to take some of those reps and, potentially, be active and play in the game. So that's why I think it's safe to have Wingo on there. Broderick Martin also has an injury. We're not sure about that, correct?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm comfortable with the 6 that we have on there.
Eventually, when DJ Reader gets back, is Kyle Pecco, if we have some injuries, is he going to be pushed off the roster? Obviously, it's going to just depends on how he plays and how he's doing at the time. But I think he's pretty safe for the roster right now. He didn't play all preseason for a reason. But now that DJ Reader's coming back, it's a little more shaky ground. But I think that he's going to start out the season on the team for sure.
So if these 6 are the guys, let's say DJ's inactive week 1, who are your starters? Who are your 2 that are out there first?
Well, probably Aleem and Levi are going to start out, I would imagine, which is crazy that Levi's pushed himself into the starting position.
Right.
We were, wondering if he was going to even make the team, in the summer in minicamp. And then he started to look good and you hear things, but it's hard to, minicamp when there's no contact, it's hard to know how a defensive. We were just happy he was out there practicing and he wasn't injured, right?
Right.
And we were just like, oh, Levi's out there. But now, when contact started and he was still showing out, and then they goes to New York and he's, showing out there, and then, they don't play him at all in any of the preseason games. So it's pretty well set that, he's going to be out there. It's crazy. This could end up being amazing for the line if he ends up, becoming the player that we always wished he was.
For sure.
All right.
So that one wasn't as big of question marks. This one is the question mark one, though, the defensive end, the edge rushers.
Yep.
Real quick. So how many did you keep?
So I only have 4 edge rushers.
Okay.
And
so I have 5.
Okay.
So my edge rushers, I have Aiden Hutchinson, Marcus Davenport, Josh Pascal, Isaac Ukwa, and James Houston. So I have Houston making the roster.
Yeah. I was not confident in Houston making the roster. So I have the first 4 you mentioned outside of James Houston. So I have Davenport, Pascal, Hutchinson, and Ukwu. Dan Campbell did not sound confident yesterday when he talked after Saturday after the game. He did not sound confident at all about Houston making the team. it's crazy. I don't know, but I just don't. I think he's more of a trade candidate for me. That he, I don't think they'll just cut him, but I think that he might get traded for a late round pick, or if a team that lines up with a wide receiver or something like that, I could see us trading for that.
Yeah, when I was making my 53, he was the very last person that I put in there. He's a true 50-50 on the fence, what he's shown in the past versus what he's done so far. I mean, Pro Football Focus had him graded as the highest rated defender for the Lions in this last preseason game. You take that for what it's worth, but I mean, he did have a sack. He did actually, he wasn't invisible this time. He did show up. So
right,
it's tough. Obviously, I'm not, I 100% believe that there's a good chance that he's not there, but I think 50-50 that he may make the team as well.
Yeah, I think 50-50 is right on. It is so close for me about whether he's going to be on there or not. It seems crazy to me that someone with his skill that you're going to cut. However, if the injuries that he's had have slowed him down and he's not able to get as much pass rush, then, he's not as valuable, because a guy like Ukwu is bigger, can do the power rush, and he's better against the run. So, I mean, he's more versatile into what downs you could put him on. Whereas Houston, I think you're primarily going to have him either in, 3rd and long or 2nd and very long, where that they're not going to run and you don't need to worry about it. I don't know. I mean, he's definitely got trade value, so I think that the Lions decide to not keep him. I think they'll be able to get someone. It's not going to be high, You're not going to be getting him for a 3rd or 4th rounder. It's, 6th or 7th, probably conditional 6th or, a 7th, or we could trade him for another player.
You could take him in a 7th and trade him for a 5 or something like that. Like, there's potential out there. I think the thing about Dan Campbell and, I guess the frustration is that what he can do and what's expected of him and what we were hoping for. So it's frustrating that, it hasn't happened. It's got to be frustrating for them to, have high hopes that he's going to be picking up the Sam position and being able to branch out, and then found out that he really is not going to be able to do that. So now if he does stay on the team, he is just going to be a situational pass rusher, which is still valuable though. So it's just really up in the air.
Yeah, no, they didn't do James Houston any favors by, doing all the Sam stuff. He could have been working on his, developing other pass rush moves and stuff like that. But I can understand what the Lions wanted. The Lions had a dynamic player that could rush the passer. If we could keep him on the field more, then he's a real more valuable player. He, wasn't going to fit in the Lions' plans that way. So now he's back to being just an edge rusher. But you're right. There's a tremendous value in rushing the passer, especially someone that can do it as well as him. It just, his other abilities about stopping the rush, keeping an edge, not being able to drop back in coverage, those are what's going to limit him, what downs he can be on the field.
But at the same time, you think of a 3rd and 12 situation, you've got Aiden Hutchinson, DJ Reader, Aleem McNeil, and James Houston on that line rushing your quarterback. That's dangerous. I mean, I like the idea of that, but...
Or you got Levi in there. I mean, Levi's got a quick first step. He'd probably be on there more pass rush downs.
Right. Pascal's going to just push whoever's in front of him back.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you got DJ in there, you got to double team him. But, it'll be interesting to see how they do the different, who's in on what packages, because we haven't seen any of that. We see just very basic stuff. Really, there's only one other one is Mitchell Agude. Were you...
Right. He was one of the people I have that just missed that cut. And I think that's probably... I think if Houston doesn't make it, then he will. I still think we need 5 defensive ends, 5 edge rushers.
Yeah, John Kaminsky's going to start out the season on the IR, but he might be eligible to come back at the end of the... if he was there, then it'd be really... he definitely would be on there, and that would probably be your 5th. I think Mitchell's got value. You're hoping that he can make it to the practice squad if he can skirt through waivers like that. So we'll see. I'm really, the James Houston thing is probably the most intriguing. That and the quarterback for me are the two, like, what are they going to do on here? A lot of the other ones are not as important to me. But next I have linebacker group. I have 6 for linebackers. I'm assuming that you have 6 as well. So Derek Barnes, as far as linebackers, we got Derek Barnes, Anzalone, Germ, Jalen Reeves-Maven, Malcolm Rodriguez, Jack Campbell, and Ben Neiman. And I'm assuming those are the same ones that you've kept.
The same 6. I don't think there's really any question marks even here, especially after Ben Neiman, played really well in the preseason and then he didn't play in the last game. I think that's that secured that.
Yep, that was it. When he didn't play, I was like, oh, Ben is, because I don't know if he was on my roster before that, and I was like, oh, he didn't play. Well, that's the sign that he's
for sure, right.
The team. So he played himself enough to be on the team. So not really any surprises in this list. We know what Alex brings to the table. Hopefully Malcolm comes back. I'm excited to see how Jack does as the middle linebacker, and then the fact Derek Barnes playing in the Sam. He really started to come into his own last year. Obviously had that awesome interception and, versus Tampa Bay. So
an iconic interception, you might say.
You might say, some might say more than
maybe
us,
the most iconic.
Maybe.
Sorry, go ahead.
He also had an iconic missed safety on Dak Prescott. So, he's had his ups and downs, but I'm excited to see Derek Barnes. Out of all this, him and Jack Campbell are the two that I'm most excited to see.
Definitely. There's no questions about the 6 that we're keeping. I do think it'll be interesting as the season goes on to see. I guess it kind of depends on Jack Campbell's development and to see if Derek Barnes takes another leap forward. But looking at our roster and looking at the position groups, I think the linebackers probably look like they may be the weak link, or depending on how they start playing, then we don't have any. As of right now, though, I think that's I guess you would say the weakest position that we have. And it's not all that weak.
No, not that they got Alex in his primary position. He had a really good season last year until he got banged up a little bit and then he slowed down. But I like him playing, in the position he's at. He's got a little more freedom and he played really well last year. And then Aaron Glenn said that his coverage skills have improved. And, we had that game in the very week 1 last year. He had that block pass versus Kansas City, and you thought, oh, this is what we're going to have. Kind of really didn't see it the rest of the year. If we could see more of that, him disrupting the passing game, that's just going to, because I have no problem that Jack's going to be in there stopping the run game. It's just a matter if he can, use his athletic ability in coverage. That was going to just complete his game. So and Jalen Reeves-Maven for, backup linebacker, special teams player, he plays really good linebacker when he's in there. It's not a liability. I feel very comfortable with him playing out there. Very smart player.
Yes. You don't have to question any of these guys' football instincts or their work ethic. They're not taking plays off, and they attack the ball. They know how to get there.
Yep. Yeah. I'm happy with this group. It's, fairly consistent with last year. I mean, really, Ben Neiman's the only one that we've added to the group. We lost Pittman to free agency, so Ben Neiman's kind of just moved in. But I'm very comfortable with this linebacking group. Is it, number one linebacking group in the league? No, but it's very reliable. You know what you're getting, so I'm happy with it. Very smart players.
Right.
All right. What you got for cornerback?
All right. Cornerbacks. That's another one that I feel pretty good about. I have us keeping 6. So I have Carlton Davis, Terrion Arnold, Ennis Rakestraw, Amik Robertson, Khalil Dorsey, Kendall Vildor.
That's correct. That's how I got. So I kept every safety. So that's why I had more.
Yeah, right.
But no, I'm pretty deep group for cornerback. I'm pretty happy with this group.
Yeah. I mean, we got some experienced guys. We also have some really, really high-end draft picks. The rookies that we have seem to be the real deal based on what we've seen so far. So I definitely think, where we were kind of weaker in cornerback last year, we definitely have had an upgrade. And yeah, I don't think the only other one that you could make a case for that's on the roster right now would be Gilmore. And he just really, he was getting beat in practice. He was getting beat in the preseason games. He also wasn't tackling all that well when he was allowing the catches. He just really didn't have a really good showing. So I don't think that there's any chance. The 6 that we have, we both agreed on it, and I think that's kind of a done deal. Like, that's how it's just going to be.
Yeah, I agree. There's really know. It's just a matter of how we're going to disperse these guys and what order they're going to be in. We're going to start out with Terrion and Carlton as our 1s and 2s. It just matters, where Ennis is probably going to be our number 3. And Amik's probably going to be our nickel. And then Ennis may back up Amik at nickel. You might also have Branch playing out there. And then you got Dorsey and Vildor. And Dorsey is a really good special teams player. So, that's going to add to the reason why he's on this team. But he actually played pretty well corner too. So I'm much deeper room this year. So hopefully we see results on the field that match that. I know for a fact that they're going to be able to help out in the running game. All those guys are going to be massively involved in stopping the run. So I'm not worried about that at all.
For sure. Be interesting though, do you think with the corners that we have now, are we going to just kind of leave, Carlton, you man the left side, Terrion, you're on the right side, Amik, you're following in the slot. If we have a big nickel package with Ennis out there as well, or we get Branch out there, do you think we're going to do, just for instance, we play Minnesota 2 games a year. Do you think we're going to have Carlton or Terrion just shadowing Justin Jefferson the whole game? Or do you think we're going to try to get them to stick to one side of the field and rotate in and out and do it like that?
That's an interesting question. I don't have a read on that yet. I mean, we haven't seen those starters out there yet. We saw Terrion battle with Amon-Ra many times in training camp. Carlton was hurt the times that we were out there, so didn't really get to see much of him. Carlton wants to be your number 1, so I think if he has it up to him, he's going to be traveling with whoever the number 1 wide receiver is. I think that's the way he's going to want it. But whether Aaron Glenn wants it that way, I don't know. I think Aaron Glenn's going to kind of play all over the place. What do you think?
I kind of hope that they leave them on each side of the field and let the receiver move around to them, because we have some stronger corners than what we've had in the past. It wasn't working having Cam Sutton follow Justin Jefferson around and, trying to talk trash to him and giving up 200 yards. But obviously with Carlton and Terrion, they're both better corners than what Cam Sutton was. So, I mean, you hope that it plays out that way if you decide to have them shadow a number 1 receiver. But I think leaving them on one side of the field kind of helps maybe disguise our coverage a little bit better. Maybe it helps disguise which way the blitzes are coming from. And I think it will help overall if they didn't have to shadow around the number 1 guy. But then, you also have situations where, if we're not moving around, if we're not shadowing, maybe they start lining Justin Jefferson up solely in the slot over Amik Robertson, and they're trying to do different things. So they'll probably take it game by game, but I'm intrigued by the cornerback group that we have now. I feel good about it though.
Well, that's the thing I like about having Amik in the nickel. He can play outside corner too. So, if they do try to put, Justin in the slot or whatever, I think Amik can handle it too. And I like his versatility inside, outside. And it gives, obviously gives Aaron Glenn a lot more versatility about how he's going to line up his guys. I think if Carlton Davis has his thoughts, he's going to want to travel with the number 1, wide receiver.
Terrion probably wants that too, though. I mean,
yeah, Terrion's the rookie, and I think he'll defer. This year he seems to be like that. But in his head, yes, I think that.
Well, we'll see how well. If that's the plan, we'll see how well Carlton does doing that.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, man to man, he's very good. I think we might struggle a little bit in zone. So I think you're going to see a ton of man to man with what we have. A lot more communication in zone about passing things off, and we have young guys back there. So I think that, you're going to have just more man-to-man for that reason alone. All right. Safety group. Right. So I have 5, you have 4. I'm betting that my difference is I have CJ Moore and you don't.
That's exactly right. I had to leave CJ Moore off.
Yep. We got Iffy, Kirby Joseph, Brian Branch, CJ. I have CJ Moore, and then Brandon Joseph. So the Iffy injury leads me to why we might need have an extra safety on there. If I have to say my first to go, say if he ends up being all right, CJ Moore is probably my first to go. I think they're going to keep Brandon Joseph over CJ Moore.
Yeah. He was in my list of players that were just missed out on it. Yeah, we talked about that before. Brandon Joseph showed more value from the actual safety position outside of only special teams, whereas that's kind of CJ Moore's, that's how he's making the roster is based on how valuable he is on special teams.
Right. And also, from what I've read, is Brandon Joseph is more of your center field type safety. So, say Kirby got injured, he could more step into that spot more than what Iffy or Brian Branch could step into. So he gives you kind of some redundancy there. Brandon Joseph he had some ups and downs in the preseason, but he also had multiple interceptions. He made plays, and it kept showing up on the practice report. So that's why I think that he's going to, I think Brandon Joseph will make the team. If he's injured, makes me wonder if they're going to keep CJ Moore. And this is kind of the roster gymnastics I was talking about, why I think that they might cut Nate Sudfeld. It gives them a little bit of time, to evaluate these injuries and then know if they're going to need, to keep this position. Because I think the fact that Nate is probably going to just pass through waivers without any worries, that you're going to be able to just pick him up and then you can cut someone like CJ Moore if you need to.
Definitely.
Lawrence Strickland, I'm hoping that he can make to the practice squad. I think he showed some potential. He just has a lot of learning to do. He was making plays, especially coming up in the run game. I saw him many times making tackles coming up. I think that he's got potential, but I also don't think we're going to risk losing him to waivers at all. He'll probably easily make it to the practice squad.
Yeah, somebody that showed out in practice and kind of, I think, made the most out of his opportunity, but just not quite enough to actually crack the roster. It's a numbers game, and he kind of fell outside of that. Speaking of numbers game, though, it's just what I was going to say is you really are at a toss-up with Brandon Joseph, CJ Moore, both, depending on, like you said, those other positions, if we're cutting somebody from elsewhere. If he's hurt, then we have to keep another one.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it is interesting. I think, obviously, the top three are the top three. There was never any doubt about that. So,
yep. Yeah, just hopefully if he's not, something we got to put him on the IR or something like that and bring him back.
Right.
And our special teams, I'm assuming, so there's probably, I've noticed that some people have them keeping Hogan Hatton over Scott Daly. I have Scott Daly as our long snapper, Jake Bates, and then Jack Fox. Is that what you have?
Yeah, I had them keeping Scott Daly. I mean, there's just, I don't know what the reason would be for even trying to make a move there if you have the consistency already with your long snapper. I mean,
I think some people's argument is that Hogan, he can play linebacker. He's just more athletic, and that's kind of a free talent for a long snapper. But you're only going to need that on, a very long field goal try that, that would be returned is when you would need an athletic long snapper to come down on the coverage team or all the punts. The Lions aren't going to punt this year because we go for it on all fourth downs, and our offense is so good, so we don't have to worry about that, right?
And if we do punt it, it goes 70 yards. We don't have to worry about them returning.
Exactly. These are all things that we think about, right? So I think, it's one of those things. If it's, if it's not broke, why fix it? Scott Daly, we know that he can do pressure situations. We don't hear about bad snaps at all. Last year, the problem with any problem with the kicking game was not due to snaps. It was, if anything, it was with our kickers. So, why try to fix that?
I don't understand the argument of, having value elsewhere, on the return. I mean, you don't keep the punter because he can tackle guys that come down there. That's not what he's there for.
Right, exactly. This punter's a very good tackler. Well, if you're having to rely on your punter for tackling, then you have other problems with your coverage teams.
We could just let Rodrigo punt then, right?
Yeah, he does everything else with the team. I'm going to see him out at tight end soon, too. But that's kind of how we got it lined up. It'll be interesting. I am of the feeling that what they announced as the 53-man roster on Tuesday isn't necessarily how it's going to be in week one. I have a feeling there's going to be some movement. I was expecting more people to be cut today. Than what, for the Lions. I thought, we decided to record this at night just in case there was stuff that happened. The DJ Reader thing happened, so that was nice that we were able to talk on that. But I was expecting some early cuts to happen. But no, probably starting tomorrow, then I would expect, us to start seeing some names, probably at the bottom of the, like your Jalen Calhouns, your Tom Kennedys, you'll probably start seeing those released.
The people that just got there like a week or so ago. I mean, you
Yeah.
know, right. You don't hold those all till Tuesday. I mean, they knew what it was when they got here.
Yeah, we're not going to find out about James Houston until, it's officially released or we trade him before, 4 o'clock on Tuesday. So,
Right.
it was a fun exercise. Had you ever done anything like this before, putting together
No.
a 53?
I mean, I obviously just being a fan, I have people that I hope make the team and people I don't, care for as much, but never to lay it all out like a 53 like this and have to go in depth and really think about it.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting because there was like somewhere you're just like this group, like linebackers, we just knew the 6, that was going to take. There wasn't as many open roster spots. And I imagine in years past, it was more wide open. You didn't know. I mean, sometimes we didn't know who our starters were going to be out of a group.
Right.
Just
right.
our lineup was so weak. Whereas now, the starters are pretty well established and we're just, picking on secondary guys. A couple of the injuries like DeBroderick Martin and Iffy made it interesting about what contingency plans about keeping that. And then the whole DJ Reader coming off the PUP list, which, you could have had him on your PUP list and then that would have given you an extra roster spot. So knowing that ahead of time just helped me solidify that. Based on Dan Campbell's press conference earlier in the week, he kind of alluded to that DJ Reader might be available. So I kind of figured he might be coming off the PUP list. But the fact that he passed his, physical today was good. It wasn't a matter of, hey, we want to take you off the PUP list, but then he couldn't pass the physical because he wasn't in enough shape. But apparently he's ready to go.
Right. Great news.
Yes. Awesome news. So this is fun. We'll see how it goes on Tuesday. So got a couple, differences. We'll see who gets to, be the king here. We'll see, or if it's a mix. I was right here, you were wrong there. But it's for the most part, we have pretty much the same list. So
I think most people making these lists for the Lions probably have the same, except for, there's only a handful, kind of what we said before. There was only maybe 5 or 6 spots up for grabs. And then after, well, even based on who played in the preseason game, then that kind of narrowed down to like 2 or 3 outside of injuries. So
yeah,
there's only so many pieces of the puzzle that weren't already set. So
yeah, one guy we didn't mention is Matthew Betts, that CFL player from the edge. I hope that he makes it to the practice squad. I still think he's kind of NFL ready yet, but I'm hoping that he can make it to the practice squad and be able to provide us injury relief later on and use his pass rushing skills. So I
did list a couple practice squad players just in case we had talked about that. He was on there. Parker Hesse, I have practice squad. Guaquin, Lauren Strickland, and Ty Summers, the linebacker.
Yep.
Those are guys I hope to see on the practice squad.
Yeah, I think those are all good takes on that. Like I said, I hope Zonovan Knight can make it over there. I fully expect like Caden Davis I think Doris Fountain might make it on the practice squad too.
Right.
But Doris might be there just long enough until we get someone else that
exactly
that come in. That might be a position that he might not be on there very long. All right. Well, we'll release this on Monday morning. We'll see how wrong we are on Tuesday at 4 o'clock, or maybe even earlier. We'll, if one of our guys gets cut, between now and then.
Jason's used to being wrong about stuff.
I know. We work together the next 2 days, so as we Twitter unloads its information, we will be able to brag or hide in a corner and, avoid the other person. One of those two things. So, all right, man. This has been fun exercise. We're inching closer to, real football that has consequences and matters, and you want to see a win. So, for Jacob, I'm Jason. Go Lions.